Now if you've ever played Dark Souls, then you'll recognise this smug looking enemy called the Fire Prelate, guardians that protect the flame in various locations, including the land of the giants. And with a giant hammer and some of the toughest armor available in the game, how would their cosplay compete in PvP and PvE? Well, like the video and give it to me bite size. So the Fire Prelate setup is quite simple. We have the Fire Prelate set, which will provide us with brilliant defense all round, and a chunky 96 poise, which is super useful as it means we can take minuscule amounts of damage and stand firm against strikes. They wield the Prelate Inferno Crosier as their main weapon, and thankfully, you can infuse this beast of a hammer, so I've opted for a heavy infusion while keeping the Ash of War the same. The weapon art is Prelate's Charge, which literally charges our flaming hammer towards an enemy like a train, sweeping them up for damage after an initial explosion. I'll also note that I've chosen to add in the Great Jar's arsenal for this build, simply because this armor set requires a silly amount of endurance to use without the talisman, so I figured it would make sense to take some of that weight off, leaving us more stats for our strength investment on a level 137 hero. So starting off with the PvE capability, this weapon is a powerhouse capable of dishing out massive damage and staggering humanoid enemies with Prelate's Charge. The stagger damage is also pretty good, allowing us to get in a critical hit, but the weapon's reach is rather short, and this isn't helped by the rolling attack, which strikes down. And in PvP, you'll get similar results, where the weapon sometimes barely scratches an enemy, but when it does, it doesn't disappoint. Our jumping attacks are brilliant, covering a large area and doing massive damage, and our regular attacks also cover a large area with swings. This is especially the case with the running heavy and backstep light attacks. Something I noticed on a few occasions is that the hitboxes on the weapon can sometimes go a bit wonky and miss the opponent entirely, either because they are under the handle or just at an odd angle. And looking at Prelate's Charge, this weapon art is pretty good even after the patch, allowing you 3 stages of damage from the explosion that's great for finishing off enemies, to the charge itself, and then the sweep up that flings enemies into the air. The damage we take is fairly small for most weapons, so I'm not worried about our survivability. And due to this defense, we can do pretty well against ranged players, providing we dodge roll. And I can't really think of any major weaknesses for this build, other than adding a quicker weapon, but this cosplay is pretty solid in its vanilla form in both PvP and PvE. So for the improvements, I'll make some minor adjustments, which can help us squeeze out some extra power for an even easier time. I'm gonna add fire to our hammer for better damage on our strength investment, and then add in some talismans, as our weapon art can trigger both the wing talisman and prophesis for extra damage. So that will be the Shard of Alexander, the Millicent's Prophesis, the Great Jar's Arsenal, and the Rotten Winged Insignia on the level 137 Vagabond, and some altered stats, giving us a bit more endurance for our talisman weight. And with this minor adjustment, we're getting some additional damage out of our attacks and bonus utility from our weapon art Prelate's Charge. Once Prelate's Charge is used, it should trigger the talismans, providing you are hitting the enemy, boosting your damage for a couple of seconds for some dirty damage. But beyond that, there's not much to add on this build, other than it's fantastic in both PvP and PvE, so do give it a try for your next cosplay build. But I'll leave you with the usual fights in the arena and against a boss, so you can see the build in action, but of course leave your comments below and subscribe. This is Bite Sized Otaku, and I hope you enjoyed.